And we're live, and I'll let everybody in. Okay. Oh, I'm so excited. All right. Hi. Nice to see you. Okay, we have Meg coming in. And whoever Z is, if you can put your camera on, then we can see you. Hello. Hi, Meg. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves in a minute. We're going to just give everyone a minute to join us and get your camera on and, you know, get all excited for Rosie. And Rosie, we were playing with the camera, so I didn't get a chance to practice your name to make sure that I was doing it correctly. Hey, Aziza, nice to see you.
I was laughing. I usually send the phonetic spelling, but it's kind of fun to see how you try to say it.
Well, I know in Italian you say all the consonants, right? So I would say it in Italian, you say all the letters, right? So I would say guagliardo.
Good point, but it's the GLI is li, like lasagna has GNA, so it's guagliardo.
Right. Guagliardo.
You're right, though. It's mostly phonetic. But
yeah. All right, good. Okay, so I imagine some people will join a little bit late, but let's get started anyway, and we can just introduce everyone who's here. So since Catherine was here first, I see Catherine, you're no longer Noah, so I'm going to unmute you, and you can introduce yourself to Rosie, and we'll go through and just tell us who you are, what you do, where you're calling from, or do we say calling? What do we say? Videoing?
Zooming.
I don't know what the verb is, but anyway, tell us where you are and if you have any particular questions for Rosie today so we can make sure to weave those into our conversation. So go for it, Catherine.
Okay, hello, I'm Catherine Strive. Yes, I had Noah as my name because it's my son. He uses the Zoom as well. So we have to change back and forth. But I am based in Brussels, Belgium, but I'm originally from Chicago. So I've been here like 18 years. I work for a Finnish elevator and escalator company. So I'm a supply chain expert for them, but also with a passion for helping women. So I do a lot of women's trainings and helping women in corporations. So this is my second coffee talk with Allison. It's always fun. It's always interesting. I don't have any special questions at this time.
Okay.
Just happy to be
here. Yay, Catherine, I'm so happy to have you here. Catherine, I want you to point your screen down a little bit so we can see you. All right. Ooh, nice
to look better?
Yes, lovely.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to have Aziza go next. Aziza, and I'm going to mute you, Catherine, okay?
Yep.
All right, Aziza, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. So my name's Aziza Kendrick. Same deal. My daughter normally does this, and we're usually playing games with families overseas, and so it's Z and key. So I just took off the key part. Work for, help run 3 law firms. I started out doing strategy, and then folded in some operational stuff as well. So that's what I'm doing right now. I don't have any specific questions for Rosa, but I'm really glad that she decided to do this event. I'm definitely excited to hear what she has to say, and look forward to meeting all of you ladies. This is my first coffee talk with Allison.
Yay, I'm so glad you're here, Aziza. And Aziza, where are you zooming in from?
Houston, Texas.
Yahoo, Houston. All right. And I don't know if you know this, Catherine, but Rosie's also in Chicago. So, okay, so Meg, why don't you introduce yourself? Oh, we lost you. We lost your video. Yeah.
I'm here. I went to go refill my coffee.
You're allowed. I've got my tea.
Thank you. It's my second cup. I draw the line at 2, but I needed it. I wanted it.
Yeah.
This is so much fun. Thank you for the invite, Allison. I am Meg. I live and work in Chicago. And I met Allison through the internet, which I think is amazing about how we're able to connect. Like, we met online, and she was the first guest that I had on the podcast that I started hosting earlier this year. So
that was so much fun.
Yes, big supporter of mine, and I'm grateful. I have a consultancy, and I work with women selling insurance products. And I really straddle the line between personal and professional development. So it's some sales coaching right now. It's a whole lot more personal development as we navigate the world and how to be right now. So I'm in my sweet spot. I hate that it's taken a pandemic to get there, but I am feeling good about what I'm doing. And I happen to know Rosie. And so when Allison said that Rosie was in the hot seat today, I was like, yeah, I got to be there. So I don't
think
have any
actually how we connected, Meg.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it was like some comments on LinkedIn that got the whole conversation started. So
I love that.
It was very
like,
cool.
Rosie is my my feminine energy guru, and it's something that I have been thinking a lot about in the last several months about how I show up in the world. And she's been a great inspiration for me. So I can't wait to learn more today. I have no idea what she's going to talk about, but I'm ready.
Woohoo! All right. Well, Meg, happy to have you here. All right. So I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to mute Aziza. Okay. So Rosie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, how you became a life designer. I think that's just so cool, right? And I'm going to pin you to make sure that everyone can see you.
Okay.
Just give us a little bit of your backstory. Ooh, and we've got Katie joining us. Let's just let Katie introduce herself for a minute as she comes online. Katie, thanks for joining us. Katie, you want to just introduce yourself for a minute so Rosie knows who you are, where you're from, and if you have any questions for her today.
Awesome, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. I was clicking on the Zoom links and
I know it was it kind of didn't work this morning, so no worries.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Katie. I have a bunch of kids at home. I'm a recovering trial attorney. I was a big firm trial attorney, a federal court in DC. I don't do that anymore. I curate the coziest virtual coffee shop where we talk about all the things that ambitious, amazing women like you come to talk about: boundaries and self-care and crushing it and saying no and managing your calendar and your to-do list and getting off the hamster wheel and moving from feeling hectic to feeling harmonious, so that we can throw balance out the window and really invite harmony into our lives while we're
love that.
doing amazing things.
And where are you calling us from, Katie? You're in Virginia, right?
I am. I'm in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of DC, and that's it. It's raining. I don't know.
And it's raining.
I'm not in my jammies. So I love to wear Christmas jammies. It's kind of my thing with my coffee, but today I'm not in my jammies, so I feel like I'm winning.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. All right, Rosie, take it away. Give us a little bit of your backstory, and I'm going to turn off my phone, and I suggest we all do the same so we can focus on Rosie.
So it's so funny, Meg, what you mentioned about the feminine energy, because that's a big part of my story. And I thought I'd get into it a little later, but I'm weaving it into today. So you've heard this before, but hopefully I think people can resonate where I'm coming from and how I got to be a life designer. Katie, you mentioned some stuff already that I think my story will resonate with you. I also like to share it because it really informed my coaching and how I move forward with my clients. So basically, I've been a certified life and career coach for over 13 years now, and 7 years full time. And prior to that, I was in advertising and marketing for 18 years. So let's just say I know what it's like to work in a competitive field. And while I was there, I started my coaching business on the side. So if being in advertising wasn't competitive enough, I thought, let me start my own business in an industry that people really don't know about much in the Midwest, a long time ago. So I was around a lot of high achieving people. And what I noticed was that, gosh, they were always working so hard, but they didn't always seem that happy. And so I'll be honest, that was even a little bit true for me. So I knew I was able to achieve my goals, but I was either exhausted going for them, or when I got them, I didn't even feel that happy about it. So I just started examining my life and understanding what I really wanted. And this is a short version, and I'll share more about the story, but that led me to really coaching high achievers to help them get results while feeling happier every step of the way. To me, that's the key. I see some nodding here. This might resonate with you.
Rosie, we've had this conversation about advertising and about what an intense, because that was my corporate career too, and what an intense world that is. And I had to laugh when you were saying, layering the business on top of it, because like it's not enough to be in advertising. Let's start a business too.
Let me just add this on. And I worked on brands like McDonald's, Anheuser-Busch theme parks, Unilever. So I bring that up because they had multiple agencies. So we were truly pitching business all the time, even though we could be the agency of record. Like for McDonald's at one point, it didn't, you're still competing with other people. So
right.
It really taught me a lot about showing up with grace and going for what you want. So anyway, in that spirit, just a little more background on me. My family's from Sicily, so that's just really fun to have that background. I've traveled there a lot, but I grew up here in America. I always tell people I'm Italian. They're like, no, you're American. I'm like, oh, that's right. We just had so much of that infused in our culture, right? And growing up with two cute Sicilian parents. So what they really taught me was to appreciate, I feel like, strong values of family and beauty and nature. I also learned what I'll call the American way, but it's also, I think, just being the daughter of immigrants, they taught us to work really hard, right? So I'm also very pragmatic and purposeful and goal-oriented. And both of these sides of me would show up. Again, you guys are nodding here. I'm guessing this is true for some of you too. And if I'm really being honest, I think I was showing up, but like in different scenarios in my life, but sort of hiding certain parts of me, which I thought, oh, that's smart, right? That's highly self-aware. Some people would even say that's the definition of self-awareness. But I was almost like over-engineering it a little bit too much, not realizing it, right? It wasn't some manipulative scheme. It was more like, oh, I'm going to show up this way with this group of people and then this way with this other person.
Right. You have different facets to your personality and you're going to show them different pieces of yourself. I remember being really shocked when I spent 5.5 years in the Netherlands, and I came back to my high school reunion, and I was referencing, as I was talking, how let me just let Sarah in here. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I'll have you introduce yourself in a second, but Rosie's just giving us some background on her. And I was just talking about how I was coming back from my high school reunion, and I mentioned to people, well, I grew up overseas. I was born in Brussels, where Catherine's zooming in from, and I grew up in London. And so many of the people said, no, I didn't realize that about you, because I had hidden that part when I was in high school. Because, at that time, having a multicultural background was not something that you talked about. And so I can understand for you, living these two different cultures, you have to navigate it. It's actually called being a third culture kid. And there are many different ways to experience that, but I absolutely resonate with you. So anyway, I interrupted you. Keep telling your story and your background.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Allison. I love it. We've talked so much and I didn't even realize we haven't even shared that with each other. So I basically felt exhausted juggling all of this, right? Trying to kind of keep at home and what was funny, it's interesting, I never heard the term third culture kid, but at home I was considered American.
Yeah.
And at school, people identified me as Italian. But neither one of those names really captured the whole me. And I didn't realize this as a child, right? But that carried through my whole life into my work world, and I could tell you so many stories about that. But the gist is I was just sort of exhausted, kind of tense and anxious, always trying to think of like how to keep this going. And really thinking, oh, I'll be happier and calmer and more graceful when I have certain things in place, right? When I got married, when I had the right career and you name it. So I didn't give up. I just kept going, kind of trying to keep the juggling act going. And one day it felt like it all paid off. I had a cute condo overlooking the lake in Chicago. I was married. I had a fun job in advertising because I really did think it was fun, just intense, decent income to fun vacations. So on the outside, it looked like, oh, I had it all. And if I'm being really honest, it was a nice life, right? And this is what I tell my clients. A lot of my clients who come to me like, everything's okay. I work with high achievers. This is good. But I always ask them, if the question isn't, are you happy? It's, could you be happier? And I knew I could be happier. So I thought, at this point, again, I didn't quite get that. So here I was, exhausted, going for my next set of goals. Now I'm going to, lose 10 pounds, get a promotion, be a better wife, you name it. And I thought, I just have to keep working harder and harder and kind of be in this doing, thinking mode. And this is what Meg and I have talked about recently too. That's a lot of masculine energy. And at the end of the day, I wasn't really even experiencing the full life I wanted, right? It didn't feel joyful or easy or graceful. And that was partially because I was shutting down that other side of me. So that's when I thought, okay, I need to figure this out. I just cannot maintain this lifestyle of what I call it the shoulds in my life, doing what I think I should do.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, I have cheesy jokes, but my favorite one for coaching is you need to stop shoulding all over
Yes,
yourself,
absolutely.
right?
I say that all the time.
Yeah. So I basically set out on this path to really get connected to myself and really understand and figure out how to make myself happy and embracing all of me, right? What I would identify as the good and the bad and all these different aspects. I use air quotes because I don't think one is good or bad. It's just these different aspects, right? And that's when things started to shift, right? I started showing up as the real me, and I'm putting out all of me, which can feel vulnerable, but it really helped. I stopped resisting and over-engineering my life, and I started trusting that all those things I didn't need anymore would fall away. All the shoulds would stop. And I think that's a really important thing because sometimes we want to, I'm going to stop doing X, Y, and Z. But the key for me, at least, was it's hard to stop something. It's easier to shift your focus, do something else. Then those other things start to fall away. And does that, that sounds like it's resonating, Allison.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then that's when I started looking for what was right for me and what I call the perfection in what is. And I do not mean being perfect or, perfection in the traditional sense. I mean the beauty or the lesson or the gift in me, in my relationships, and really in every moment in my life. And knowing that life is happening right now, in this moment, right? And that my circumstances will never be just perfect or just right. And honestly, this has been my story. This is what I've shared before, but gosh, this feels so true right now, right? With everything going on.
Yes.
And then this is what happened for me, or what I started doing is I let go of that grip on my life, right? Trying to lose the weight, be perfect in my job, be perfect in my relationship. And that's when things started to change, right? By embracing all of me and stopping like the overthinking and engineering, a different vibe came out.
What's so interesting about this, Rosie, I feel like it brings it full circle, right, to your identity and your upbringing by your Sicilian parents. Because I always think of this, and I've seen you talk about this before, la dolce vita, and living in the moment. And I love that, your surrender to the perfection of what is, as you say, really just brings your whole identity back together, right?
Absolutely. And that's when my life started to shift because I was putting that different vibe out there and attracting what I desired, but in a much more natural and organic way, which makes sense. I sort of joke, since I think some of us have some marketing background here, I say that this is almost like marketing 101, right? I got clear on who I was. I started putting that out in a consistent way, and I hope in a compelling way. And I started attracting relationships, the career, and just things I desired because I was more myself. And that's what businesses do in marketing, right? They get clear on their message, they put it out in a consistent way across the board, and ideally in a compelling way to get new customers. So what I love about this is, yes, it helped me really be focused in the moment, put my real self out there. And I know this is where sometimes people will say, but we have to think about the future. And that's absolutely true too. What I learned to do was balance it more, right? Versus always being future thinking, what am I going to do, or worrying about it, or how am I going to get this? I felt like things started to shift. I had more of a relaxed confidence. I was clear, like I said, on what I wanted. And then my path and my ideal life started to unfold before me. And
oh my goodness, that is, I love that. I love that. And before we get into our first question, I just want to make sure to bring Sarah and Megan into the conversation. Sure. Speaking of attraction and bringing people in, I'm going to unmute you, Sarah. And if you can just introduce yourself to Rosie and those of us who are here, just tell us a little bit about you, where you're zooming in from, and if you have any questions for Rosie right now.
I am zooming in from Hangover City today.
Welcome.
Keeping it real.
Can you tell?
I love it.
I am cool with who I am all the time in all forms of myself.
That's awesome.
But I'm actually zooming in from Arlington, Virginia, and I'm Sarah Alapin, the CEO of District Bliss, which is a community of entrepreneurs, and we offer like business support workshops and online happy hours and things like last night, hence. I'm also.
I'm sorry I missed it, Sarah. But maybe I'm not, because then maybe I would have been late to my own virtual coffee. Do you have any questions for Rosie, Sarah?
I do not, but I did have delicious banana bread while you were telling your story. So
excellent. Okay. All right, Megan, can you introduce yourself to Rosie and let us know why you're here? And I'm going to mute you, Sarah.
Okay. Oh, wait, let me get my video. Hi.
Hey. Nice to see you.
Sorry, I'm a little late. I'm trying to work simultaneously. That's why my video was off. I wasn't trying to be rude. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Where are you zooming in from?
I'm zooming in from Hoboken, New Jersey. Hoboken. Far too close to New York City for my comfort, but Yeah. And I'm a product manager. I work for Bank of New York Mellon. And I wanted to zoom in because I love already what you're talking about, like Dolce Vita and the shoulds in your life. And especially in this new quarantine life, there's a lot of shoulds floating around out there right now. So trying to stay centered and true to yourself in a very pressured environment right now.
Love that. Love that. Thank you, Megan. And we've got another Megan. I'm going to unmute you, Megan, and you can introduce yourself and tell us where you're zooming in from. Megan, go ahead.
Hi, I am Megan Feeney, and I'm a senior client partner at Holden Root. Oh, hi, can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Let me,
Okay, Megan, I guess we'll come back to you maybe in the questions. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna mute Megan and maybe she can introduce herself in the question. So Rosie, we're at this moment now in the quarantine where, we've been in it for a while, we've sort of adjusted to the survival of it. Those of us who are lucky enough to be safe at home and able to protect ourselves, not having to go out on the front line. There's settled in simultaneously this sort of quarantine fatigue, as they're calling it. But at the same time, in our conversation 2 weeks ago with Daria, she was talking about how the Berlin Wall came down and it completely changed the trajectory of her life. And I was really thinking about this moment as an inflection point, and I thought it would be really interesting to speak about it from the perspective of life design and sort of what do we do with that feeling? Like, you know, we are lucky enough to be here. We're all healthy. We're all able to show up on Zoom. You know, how do we figure out what makes our life purposeful? And, you know, just going from what you were talking about that piece of surrender, I'm just wondering if you can give us a little guidance for how we can navigate that question.
Yeah, sure. And you know, I might ask a question first to start off with. Just I'm curious about how people are feeling on the call right now, because I know how I felt and my clients have been doing. I feel like, and I'm oversimplifying this, but I feel like there's been two camps of people. The one camp of I'm kind of bored, I don't know, you know, what to do with all this time. And then the other camp of I'm really busy, I want to get even more done, or trying to transition because life changed. If it's easy enough to just type in the chat, I can see them. Or Allison, I know it might take a second, and maybe you could just tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone could just sort of put bored or overly busy.
Yeah, yeah. And I say that because, you know, I tend to be on that side of more, it seems busier, or I think I've always been busy, and that's what I'm really going to get at. It's sort of like there's these two people, okay, somewhere in between. I'm saying overly busy, so busy, some of both, which I get. But what I'm seeing, and I think that's pretty much everyone. Allison, what would you say?
Well, I have 2 kids at home, so I'm definitely very busy.
Very busy, right? So what's coming up for me about like what's our purpose is, I think when there's a big shift like this, what we start to notice is, for some of us, I think things quiet down, right? So for maybe the people who are feeling, I'm going to use the word bored because I don't know if that's an exact description of what's going on for people, but that's what they're noticing. And maybe they were distracting themselves with other things, and now they're you know, going to be really silent and present to what's coming up. So I think in that case, if you're somewhere in between, in those moments, really take time to say, what am I missing? Okay, this is what really matters to me, right? That's, I think, a key thing to notice. For those of us who are noticing we're even busier or have more going on, I think one thing that happens is with any kind of change, it doesn't matter what it is, right? I think with parents who are suddenly homeschooling, or parents who are working from home all of a sudden and homeschooling, right? Because some people just Allison, I believe you work from home mostly.
Yeah.
And the kids, you know, now they're home too. So you had a transition. And then I think of parents who had to do 2 transitions.
Absolutely. So much harder. I mean, at least I've got sort of the hygiene of working at home, knowing how I need those routines. My husband and I both work from home, so you know, he knows not to come in my office until lunchtime, like, you know.
But it's true. You had some structure. So whenever change happens, what gets alerted is our ego, the inner critic, right? That negative self-talk of like how everything's going wrong and how things can dangerously go awry. And that's what I'm sensing a lot with my, with people I hear or see on Facebook or talk to friends, is that they're starting to homeschool. And the reality of having their children home or working from home, again, the reality of that is probably not terrible, right, Alice? We keep talking about, at least we're safe and we're at home.
Absolutely. And I also think that everyone is realizing how much we took for granted.
Right, right. I mean, I think some people aren't even going there yet because they're in that sort of
survival
thinking, right? Survival mode. And I'm saying all that's happening is it's really our judgments and thoughts about what's happening that's making us feel this way. I mean, we have our basic needs met, most of us, right? We're safe, we're at home, we're getting food, we have shelter. And so what's happening, if I were to put my mind in someone who maybe is homeschooling, is, oh my gosh, my children aren't going to get the best education. Oh my gosh, are they going to get into the right college. And these are people who, you know, have fourth graders at home. So
Right.
I always joke, I went to, I didn't go to preschool. I had half a year of kindergarten because I lived in Sicily for part of the year. And I still got into Northwestern. So I think like everything can be okay. If your child doesn't have, like, I know it's different these days. It's probably harder to get in, but I bring that up because I just want to point out, like, of noticing that our reality isn't as terrible as the thoughts and the judgments we have about it. And that's what's making us feel uncomfortable. So with that awareness to begin with, I think that could help us start to feel calmer. And when we're calmer, we can tap into more of what's important to us, of what matters to us. And Allison had mentioned I can even get into a little exercise. Maybe we do that later if you wanted to, but it could just be a few minutes. And it's just that I think that's what's really key here, is to learn to start, you know, being with the silence and noticing, like I said in my story, what I call the perfection within, in your relationships around you, and in your life. So I started taking challenges and seeing them as opportunities to grow and learn. And Allison, I mentioned this to you, that I had started my business in 2007, right? So years ago, I probably started coaching courses. I should know these dates, but I don't. Let's say 2004, 2005. Got certified, and I'm like, that's it. In 3 to 6 months.
Wait. Before you launch into this story, I just want to go back to what you just said. So as we're thinking about this inflection point, and we're in those moments where we're quiet, and it is very quiet, right? Because there's no car, really, not a lot of cars out. There's not, even in our busyness, when we have those moments of quiet, we can ask ourselves, what does bring us joy? What is the purpose? Why are we here? And are you saying we'll receive the answer?
Yes. So what I'm going to give it a name, because I think sometimes that helps people remember that. And I call it the contrast of experience. So in that moment, whenever you're even, because I think sometimes it's hard for people to get to the silence, but yes, ideally, you can ask that question, and the answer may come to you in that moment, or it can come to you in a few days. Something I like to work with my clients on is practicing mindfulness or present moment awareness. So I think that's a really important tool to help with the awareness piece. And I can share more about that if that feels useful.
Yeah,
but that's one tool.
I think that's really a great point. And then the other question I wanted to ask you about, and this has to do with starting your business in the recession. I think you have some real practical experience to share with us about how we can think about our careers in this moment where, you know, companies are shedding staff, where the numbers are terrible for the economy. I mean, it's all very scary, but, you know, we're showing up today. Just the fact that we're showing up means that the survival piece is not so much in the forefront of our brains, but it's more like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this moment in terms of our careers? How do we make the most of it, I guess? And I'd love for you to share your experience about, you know, starting your business in the recession and kind of what pieces you took from that, lessons.
Yeah, I think the big one there was, in addition to practicing mindfulness in that moment, I asked myself a lot of questions along that path and listened for answers. You know, the big thing for me was as I was starting to mention, is, you know, I was so excited. I had gotten all, you know, went through certification, was ready to start my business. I'm like, in 3 to 6 months, I'm quitting advertising. And then in 2008, the recession hit. And I thought, ooh, perhaps not the best time to go and start my own business and something that people didn't really know much about back then. But that was more my inner critic, right? To say, don't do it. And I think it's okay to listen to your inner critic. I wouldn't let it lead your life, right? So I started saying, okay, well, maybe going full time isn't the right thing. But what, good point. Why would I give up my stable salary in advertising? I say stable because people were getting let go left and right for years during that time period.
Right. That inner critic is just trying to keep you safe, right? Your ego is just trying to keep you safe. So you do have to sort of say to it, like, I hear you, I get you, and what you have to say. And you were talking about your pragmatism before. I mean, it's real, the fear. And the fear, you have to listen to that to a certain extent.
Absolutely, Allison. And that's what I work with my clients on too. I think so often people talk about, don't listen to it, push it away, it's not important, but it's really a part of who you are. It would be like disavowing a part of you. That doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. You can treat it with gentleness and compassion, unless it gets really loud, then you may need to push it aside. But in that moment, just to use a specific example, I was hearing why leave your stable salary in advertising? And I thought, good point. I call my saboteur. We create an image and a persona. So mine was mean old nonna, and nonna.
Mine is the high school. My high school mascot. It's a battling baron, and he's like a little leprechaun, and he's very fierce.
Oh, I love it. Right, and I don't mean to offend the nonnas out in the world. There's very nice nonnas out there.
Of course, and very nice leprechauns, I'm sure too.
Right. I love it. I see we got a Bruce is another saboteur out there, inner critic. So they, again, try to help us. So I listened to her and I said, good point. Nona, let's just call her Nona. That's a great idea. I think what would make more sense right now is to put together a financial plan. So I started meeting with an accountant, and every 6 months to a year, I checked in with my accountant to say, what should I do? Is this a good time to I started the business, basically. I should mention that, but I decided to stay in my day job so that could fund what I know people call the side hustle. I don't know if I always love that term, but to build my dream career, right? And so really the key here that I hope to drive home is that at the end of the day, what really matters is knowing your truth, like I said earlier, connecting with that, what's important to you, what matters to you, how you show up, your strengths, what gets in the way, right? That negative, maybe self-talk or the saboteur, and your vision for your life. And when you have those two pieces of information, you can allow your path to unfold before you, like we talked about earlier, right? You can surrender to what is, because you're clear on the two important pieces, and you don't get attached to the how. You've probably heard this before, like focus on what you desire, don't get attached to the how. And that really helped me get through the toughest time, at least back then in my life, was building this business. And I think that applies to today. And Allison, it's so funny when we first started talking about what we're going to talk about today, there's so many good things. And you asked me that question, I said, oh my goodness, that's what I did in 2008. And P.S., that's what I built my program on. I call my program Be Perfectly You, and it has these 3 phases where you see the perfection within you by connecting with your truth. The second phase is seeing the perfection in others by learning how to connect with them. Not that anyone's perfect, but knowing that there's an opportunity there. And then finally, like I said earlier, the third phase is seeing the perfection in your world. And instead of getting paralyzed by what's happening around you, how can you take that as an opportunity to grow and learn? And at the end of the day, for me, this way my business unfolded really worked well for me, because, some people go, it's so terrible that you couldn't do what you wanted to do and go for it. And at the time it didn't feel that great. But looking back, it was the perfect way for my business to unfold, because I was marketing and advertising for one of the biggest agencies in the world on some big accounts. And I learned about revenue forecasts. I learned about something called digital online marketing and social media from people from companies like Facebook and Google were coming to my company. So I felt like I was getting paid almost to get this sort of training. I was so lucky, and to obviously use that training in my day job, but then ultimately leverage it,
I always say my corporate career, as much as I didn't love the substance of what I was doing, because I was in medical advertising, and didn't really have any connection emotionally to medicine, although I sure do right now. I'm super grateful for all the health heroes that we have and the people on the front line. But I learned a lot of skills in that career, and they served me well in my entrepreneurial journey. And I just want to go back to that idea of the vision, because of course that's what I do, quite literally creating that vision with my clients and making sure that they know the woman they want to show up as, you know, stepping in, putting that clothing on, putting themselves together, figuring out who she is and what she looks like, you know, so that you can manifest literally every day. And so I love that that's part of your process as well. And I'm wondering, I just want to stay, you know, mindful of time. It's 11:11. So I want to make sure that we get any questions that have come up maybe for the people in our audience. Sarah says, showing up as Hangover Sarah is not who I prefer to show up as, but she's showing up anyway. And I love that about you, Sarah. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself. Anything that's come up that as Rosie's been talking. And if not, we can definitely get into this exercise that you were mentioning, sharing with us, Rosie. That's what we did last time with Daria. So before we run into that, unless I have any questions, is there anything else that you really wanted to share with us, Rosie, before we get into questions?
Yeah, one quick thing, because I think it builds on what you just shared. First of all, Sarah, Hangover Sarah is beautiful. Like, I wish I looked like that. I was like, wait, first of all, well done. But what I was going to also share was, you know, Allison, a lot of times people talk, as I said, about this persona and image, about our inner critic, our ego.
Yeah.
What I also help my clients identify is who they are at their best, right? When they show up as their best selves. And my version of that, I call her Sunny. And some of you know me, I've talked about this before. But I love that because that's so synergistic with what you do. And I think about that. What would Sunny wear today? What would Sunny say today? How would she be, right? I always go back to the being. So I just wanted to say that I thought that was a great build on what you.
I love that. I love that you have a persona for her too, and you've named her. It's like Sasha Fierce for Beyonce. So Aziza asks, how did you stop the overthinking and over-engineering? Was it practicing mindfulness or other strategies as well? That is such a great question.
It really is a lot of things I just shared, which I know I just threw a lot out there, but if I'm going to just sort of list them, one is the potential exercise, if we have time to do it, is I understood what my values were, what was important to me, not my friends, not my family, not society. And I do this with my clients, and my clients are so lovely and awesome. I don't come out and ask them what that is, because they would say lovely things back to me. And sometimes what we just think on the surface is important to us isn't really what's driving us on a day-to-day basis. So I do this exercise, I help uncover what that is, and we prioritize what those top 5 or 6 priorities are. So that's one thing. And then what we do is we build our lives around that, right? So instead of, kind of letting the shoulds take over, it's, I can't remember if you were on for this part of the call, but I shifted my focus onto what I desired. I started filling up my calendar with activities that only aligned with these values. And I just put together a blog. I can grab that and put it on here if you want a blog article, or we could send it up in a follow-up. But it really helps my clients to stay focused on what they desire, and then you don't have time for the overthinking, the over-engineering. And I'll be honest, a lot of my—
I love that, Rosie. And I want to share these links right now for you. So Aziza, we're almost at time. So not only is Rosie offering a complimentary session, she's also got a newsletter with a gift, 4 simple steps to stop anxiety. And then she also shared this wonderful article she wrote for Forbes Coaching Council on how to transition into an entirely different career. So I've put all of those links in the chat, and you can grab those. For those of you who need to jump off, thank you so much for joining us. And Rosie, thank you so much. And for those of you who want to stay, maybe we can go through this activity now. So feel free to jump off. Thanks everyone for showing up for the coffee. And Rosie, do you want to take us through this activity now?
Sure. I was just going to mention one quick thing about that stop over engineering and overthinking. Check out my newsletter and the free gift that comes with it, because it gives you 4 steps to what I call mitigate the anxiety, which I think comes from overthinking. So that's actually another tool. But
perfect. So many good things.
Yeah, through the complimentary session, we could dig into anything. Please know, just happy to talk. Don't feel like you have to move forward with the program. I'm just here to help people. So, yeah, so it looks like, is everyone staying? Should we do the exercise?
I think so. Let's do it.
I think it's fun. I might ask, I will, I'm not gonna might, I will ask someone, if you're open to it, someone to share their answer when I do this exercise. So it's very simple. I just want you to think of a time in your life when you felt like everything was flowing, everything felt really good. It'd be a really rewarding moment. It could be a time you felt really alive. It can even be a poignant moment. Ideally, it's a snapshot in time, right? Not too long of a period, but maybe 5 minutes. It can even be a whole summer, but a snapshot. It could have been last week. It could have been 10 years ago. And I'd love for you to think, just jot down the first thing that comes to mind, and just consider what you were doing, who you were with, if anyone, what was going on, and even noticing what came up for you, or you know, what was going, how you were feeling. And if anyone wants to volunteer, if you feel like I need to share an experience, I can, but does anyone feel ready to share? And then I'm gonna jot down some notes.
And you can also put this in the chat box. If you don't, you can unmute yourself or put this in the chat box.
So when you're ready, I'm gonna just jot down some notes if anyone wants to share. Who you were with, what you were doing, maybe you were alone. It could be as simple as in Chicago when you're walking along the lake and the sun's shining on it, so I think it's so beautiful. Or it could be graduating college, right? Something, what seems like more significant. Anything works.
So Rosie, when I first did this exercise, I was actually really bummed out because the first thing that jumped into my mind was when I was in high school. I went to the school where Dead Poets Society was filmed, and it was an amazing place because not only was it academically challenging, but also I could do all my sports and activities because we all lived there, and I had my friend group all around me all the time. It was incredible. And what I realized when that was the first thing that came to my mind was that balance piece, right?
You noticed that was important.
Yeah, and I realized I had all of these pieces in my life in balance, and that I was able to do all of them. And so I want to let you go through the exercise, but it's funny because when you just mentioned it, I was like, well, that was high school, but there's got to be something, because that was a long time ago. There's got to be something more recent.
Oh, so I was going to ask you, when you said have you done this exercise previously with someone else, or did that just come to you? Okay.
Well, it came up again, and then I thought, well, now let me challenge myself. There's got to be, and I realized it was right before we moved here to DC, when we were in the Netherlands, and I had done that exercise and I had balanced my life out again. And so I had my career, I had my kids, I was able to go back and spend time with my family, and we had built a good network of friends in the Netherlands as well.
Okay, so I know people get a little hung up on, oh, that was a long time ago, what does that mean? I just think it reminds us the brain is amazing. In this moment, you transported yourself, you trusted yourself to go there. And I think when people hesitate sharing their story, they think it's wrong. right? Like, oh, that was a long time ago. What does that say about me? Or
Yeah.
no, it just is amazing. And this, to me, I'm just going to go back to one of our other tools, that when we get silent and focus, look at what answers are possible to come. They are within you. Trust yourself. So that's just my little thought. And it's also actually answering the question of over-engineering and overthinking. Notice how instead of over-planning it, you just allowed. Right? Feminine energy, allowing to come up what was important to you. And that's so powerful. And I joke, it's so much easier, right? Let's than overthinking and over-engineering. So our brain's powerful. Let's use this power for good and not evil, meaning instead of thinking of all the things that could go wrong, what is it that I desire? What's important to me? So anyway, I hear you, Allison, what I'm sensing, the values that were coming up for you beyond balance. So you're so obviously self-aware and attuned, and I've done this before, is community is important to you, friendships important to you, activities are important to you. You like to be active and maybe have a variety of activities, right? And family.
Which is not so possible right now, but that's okay.
Well, this is the key. I love that you just said that, because I'm working with clients who, you know, of course, before the pandemic, we have these values. Yes, this is great. I want to honor these. And suddenly we feel like, you know, movement could be a value for someone. It is for me. And I start to hear, oh, but I can't do that now. I have a client in Europe who is like, I can't, you know, leave the house. I can't do my, I forget what they're called. The cold swim, you go swimming in the cold water.
Oh, wow. Okay. Right.
But
the Eskimo plunge.
Yeah. Yes. She basically felt trapped, and it's like, wait a minute, this is important to you. Let's find other ways to experience what you desire. We end up getting attached to what it needs to look like. And so could there be other ways to gain movement? Right now, I used to belong to a gym that was right next door. I had a great community of friends there. The instructors were amazing. And my heart sank when I didn't have that. That was like my go-to to feel emotional and physical and mental health. And they started these Zoom classes, and I love them, and I've shared them with all my clients and on my newsletter, because they are giving me that sense of connection, community, and movement. I go for walks, right? There's other ways to have activities. I mean, I know for me, I like to be active too and have a variety. So maybe I'm baking more these days than I used to when I was out more. So
yeah, I would love if anyone else wants to share what came up for them now that I've shared mine. You can even share in the chat box or unmute yourself so that you can get some of Rosie's brilliance.
Oh, it's not scary, I promise.
Okay, girls trip with my mom to NYC. That's from Aziza. Wonderful. Aziza, why don't I unmute you and you can talk a little bit about how you felt in that moment.
Let's see, am I unmuted? Okay. It took me a minute to get there. When you first asked, it's like, I have nothing. And then I had to dig a little deeper. But I found myself going over in my head and thinking of the event and discounting it and then feeling, I can't find anything, and then getting worried that I wouldn't have anything to share. So I threw this one out there based on, my mom grew up in New York. She's from Trinidad, but she wanted to go back and kind of go around her old stomping ground. She'd had some people pass away recently, so it was just showing me her college in Brooklyn where she grew up and the favorite haunts that she liked to do. I've got siblings, so it was just a trip for me and her where we went out and did stuff together without all the pressures of everything at home, kids in school and work and all of that stuff. So it was a bubble moment, I guess, for us and all of the hecticness that is our lives.
You cut out a couple times, but I think I heard the gist of it. Did you say someone passed away too?
Yeah, my mom had friends from New York pass away. College friends, really close. And so going back, and it was important for her, and that I could share something like that with her at that moment was great.
I love that. And how did you feel when you were with her?
Centered, I guess.
Great. So it's interesting. So what comes up for me, and I'm making an assumption here with mom. And when I do this exercise with my clients, you know, we work together. I share something, you can modify it to make it your own. But I believe friendship is important to you. I know you said it's your mom, so friendship and family, but it seems like there's that special extra bond with your mom. Connection is important. I would say learning is important.
Mm-hmm.
And these are values that could be applied to all areas of your life, right? That's why I go here, because it really is so powerful. I think something around roots or foundation is important to you. And then obviously when you said being centered, I said the roots piece before the centeredness, and when you added that, I'm like, yes, you know, I think having that grounding, if you will, there's something about knowing this part of your mom's history that was meaningful to you, grounding and centering for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do these resonate with you? Do you feel like these qualities are important to you?
Yeah, I think in my life, and everybody on the call that have amazing careers and kids and parents and stuff that you're juggling, it's very easy to get, I find myself getting caught up in the escape of it. So the more I do and the faster I run, the less time I have to think about the uncomfortable things in the calm. So I probably need to spend some more time with that.
That's exactly what I was getting at in the beginning. Megan, I thought you had to leave. Bye-bye. I think is this in this moment, for those of us who are always busy, including me, I think it could be considered a way that we distract ourselves, right? We're just going. But I really have felt that once I've gotten clear on my values, and I do this exercise every year, I reconnect with my clients. We even check in quarterly on this. It's not just like, oh, because there could be core values, but I think different times of our life, there's different things we want to focus on.
Absolutely.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes community can be more important, and friendship and family, or sometimes I'm really solidly connected to my family. It doesn't mean, I say this to working moms a lot when we do this exercise, because we'll go through this, there's more to the exercise, but let's say this is the gist of it, then ask them to prioritize them. And if, you know, family comes in a little like 4 or 5, I'm like, this doesn't mean the kids aren't going to get fed or that you're not there for them. I feel so guilty. I'm like, don't worry, I won't tell the children. But also, you're doing that. You're rocking it there. You maybe need a little more, you know, focus on self-care or something else. So we prioritize that. And then again, I'm oversimplifying this, but hopefully these nuggets will help you. And like I said, I can grab that blog post.
You know what I'm observing, Rosie, that's so interesting to me, and it really ties it back to everything that we've been talking about on our call today, is how you really, when you heard the story, you tapped into your intuition of what you were feeling and what you were sensing about what Aziza was saying or about what I was saying. And I think that's sort of the underlying theme here, that really when we, even in our busyness, so, you know, I've been taking the kids out every day to walk in the woods to get our exercise. There are those moments of stillness as they're chatting with each other about Minecraft or D&D or whatever, where I can just be quiet and look around me and, you know, bathe in the green and have that moment to check in and listen to myself, just as you were listening to us. What is coming up? What is important? And I think that all of us, you know, can maybe take a moment this weekend to get quiet, even if it's just in the shower or, you know, for a minute while you're doing dishes. I mean, there's always that you can take 5 minutes and get quiet and be with yourself and think about what's important and remind yourself why you're here. Because for all of us, we're all here for a reason, and we all have something to give to make the world a better place. Would you agree with that?
I would, and that's exactly what I feel like I was getting at with the mindfulness. If you just hit it on the head perfectly, but even if you're struggling, like, oh, I don't remember to do that, I just posted two articles, I believe, one about the planning your day based on your values, the other one on practicing mindfulness. Because if you do that where you're washing your hands or in the shower, and just say, I feel the warm water on me, I feel how it feels on my body, that actually starts to train your brain to do exactly what you said, Allison. And I only bring that up because sometimes it's hard to remember, oh, I'm going to focus on asking this question. Just start with what you're noticing in the moment. And that's a great way to, I think, start to train yourself to get there.
Ah, so much goodness. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us here today. We're already at 11:30. I love that everyone was here, and I know that this time is really, there's a lot going on. So I want to send you all the love and light. And thank you so much, Rosie, for being with us. So many
Thanks,
good.
Allison. So great to meet you all. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.